Iran. Now the Archbishop is in London, where he's held talks about the missionaries, Dr. John Coleman and his wife Audrey, and Miss Jean Waddell, former secretary to the Anglican Bishop of Iran. Yesterday he met Mr. Douglas Hurd, the Minister of State at the Foreign Office, and Dr. Runcie, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Since he arrived, Archbishop Capucci has also been to see some of the Iranian students imprisoned in this country. Tonight he said his visit here was primarily at the request of the Iranian Parliament, to see if he could take some initiative on behalf of the imprisoned students. But he'd also been asked to come by the exiled Bishop of Iran, the Right Reverend Degani Tafti, and there's been speculation that the Iranian students could be exchanged for the British missionaries. Bishop Tafti was asked about the reports.
I assure you that there is no bargain at all. You know very well that the British government won't enter into bargains, and there is nothing of that sort.
The view of the Foreign Office is that Archbishop Capucci is here on his own initiative on a humanitarian mission. He's already arranged the release of Italians imprisoned by the Iranian regime, and earlier this year the Archbishop was given custody of the bodies of 8 American servicemen who were killed trying to rescue the hostages in Iran. He organised the return of the bodies to the United States. Iran's Prime Minister, on a visit to New York, has said that conditions for the release of the 52 American hostages could be set soon. Mr. Rajaei said the question would be considered by the Iranian Parliament. He was asked if the hostages could be freed before the American presidential elections on November the 4th, the first anniversary of their capture.
از نظر دولت ایران
For the people of Iran, the issue is not the issue of American election. For us, the issue is freeing the hostages and solving the question of this hostage question, and not electing a president for the United States. But I could tell you with assurance that the moment that the Parliament, the Majlis, makes its decision, which I think that moment is not far away, for the government, for my government, the question will be final and solved. Thank you very much.
At the UN earlier, Mr. Rajaei had rejected calls for a ceasefire in the war between his country and Iraq. And fighting in the Gulf has continued, with Iranian planes in action against the Iraqi troops who are still advancing on the vital Iranian refinery town of Abadan after successfully bridging the Karun River. Christopher Morris, with the Iraqi forces close to Abadan, has sent this report.
Undetected for 6 days, the Iraqis had continued their huge build-up for the attack on Abadan. The bridgehead across the river Karun had not been located by the Iranians, so tanks and hundreds of troops have poured across to besiege the world's biggest oil refinery just 15 miles away. On both sides of the river, Iraqi troops had been expecting an attack to try and destroy the pontoon bridge. They dug in and established well-camouflaged defensive positions, but at last the Iranian Air Force found the bridge. This was the start of a concentrated air attack to cut the Iraqis' vital supply lines across the river. 2 American-built Phantom jets dropped their bombs, but missed the target. They exploded somewhere in the desert nearby, and less than half an hour later, 2 more Phantoms swooped low in a second raid. Again, bombs were dropped. Again, they missed the bridge. Obviously, there's some desperation now in the Iranians' attempts to destroy the Iraqis' bridgehead and relieve the siege of Abadan.
The Queen has ended her state visit to Italy with a tour of the ruins of Pompeii. The Queen and Prince Philip spent nearly 2 hours at the site, accompanied by an army of Italian photographers. As Keith Graves reports, it proved an enjoyable day for the royal party, but a disappointment for the press.
It was at the Queen's request that the trip to Pompeii was arranged. It was somewhere she told officials that she'd always wanted to visit. The officials obliged and closed off the place for her benefit, and so Her Majesty was able to take a Saturday morning stroll in the rain across the Forum, the best example of a Roman square in existence, while the cause of the disaster that overtook the town 1800 years ago, the volcano Vesuvius, remained out of sight in the clouds. surrounded by a host of experts anxious to impart their knowledge, and by one persistent local resident who slipped through the security, the Queen spent 2 hours wandering around. There'd been much speculation about what she would see, and even reports that some of the more explicit frescoes, depicting the uninhibited activities of the Pompeians before retribution rained down on them in the shape of molten lava, would be hidden from the royal gaze. To the distress of the paparazzi, Italy's notorious photographers, her route avoided what are described in the handbook as equivocal pictures.
The Australian federal election has returned to power the right-wing coalition government. It means that, despite the opinion polls, Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser will stay in office, though with a reduced majority. Bob Friend reports from Sydney.
Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser shrugged off opinion polls that predicted Labour would win. As he went to register his vote, he reminded his critics that only one poll counted, the one that took place on election day. During an often bitter campaign, opposition leader Bill Hayden had claimed that Mr. Fraser was arrogant and indifferent to the country's growing number of jobless. Mr. Fraser's tight monetary policy has been aimed at reducing inflation, now at a little more than 10%, even at the expense of rising unemployment. He will no doubt regard today's election victory as an endorsement of his economic strategy. Australia's business community, as well as overseas investors, have been worried at the prospect of a Labour government. Opinion polls which predicted wrongly that Labour would get in sent shares plummeting on Sydney Stock Exchange.
In this country, members of the Labour Party are continuing to put forward their arguments about how to elect a new leader. 17 MPs have written to Mr Foot saying that the election shouldn't be held at all after the Blackpool Conference decision to change the method of electing a new leader. Tom Jackson, the Communications Union leader, said it would be a gross insult to suggest that Mr Foot act as a caretaker. He said any leader would be better than a caretaker. Dennis Healey is still the favourite for the leadership, according to a national opinion poll carried in tomorrow's Observer newspaper. The poll says that 3 out of 4 Labour voters prefer Mr Healey, and only 19% opted for Mr Foot. The Voluntary Euthanasia Society Exit is to go ahead with plans to produce a controversial booklet listing ways of committing suicide. It took the decision despite warnings that it could face prosecution under the 1961 Suicide Act. Richard Whitmore was at the Society's annual meeting.
It was a noisy meeting at which Exit members got rid of the executive committee who had refused to print the booklet for fear of prosecution. The booklet would be available for members only, and since plans to print it were announced, membership has increased by 7,000. Many believe that to further their cause for euthanasia, the society should publish and be damned.
Although it will give various bits of factual information, almost all of which is available, published in other sources elsewhere, we simply bring it together. We also devote most of the booklet to saying why one should not end one's life and why one should think very hard before doing so. It is extremely hard to see how a booklet which says that at very great length can actually be said to be inciting or encouraging that course of action.
But legal opinion is that under English law, the society could be prosecuted for aiding or abetting suicide. And today's vote to print the booklet could result in a legal test case.
Now with news of today's sport, here's David Cass.
Well, the soccer league tables have changed a little today, and there have been a few surprising results. Norwich and Crystal Palace, for instance, who lost their managers this week, both won. Norwich took their first away points of the season, beating Coventry 1-0, and this penalty from Clive Allen gave Palace only their second victory of the season. They beat Leicester 2-1. That victory took Palace out of the bottom spot. Manchester City, who lost to Birmingham, take over. At the top of the division, Ipswich defended their unbeaten record against Manchester United, who they beat 6-0 in the corresponding fixture last year. A huge kick by United's goalkeeper, Gary Bailey, looked like turning the tables early today. Jordan headed it on, Coppell's pass and Mickey Thomas's shot. Offside, according to referee Ron Chalice. Nearly half-time, and Mr Chalice is about to upset the Ipswich players as well. A great through ball from George Burley to Russell Osman, but Bailey was there to handle outside his area. Mariner was following up a good goal. But Mr Chalice had already awarded a free kick. It was Mariner, though, who opened the scoring after 14 minutes of constant Ipswich pressure at the start of the second half. The cross from Osman, and Mariner scored from an almost impossible angle. Then United began to attack. A bad back pass put Stevie Coppell clear. An equally bad foul by goalkeeper Cooper, and a deserved booking for him. Sammy McIlroy equalised from the penalty spot. Then followed a lot of United pressure, but no extra score. The result, Ipswich 1, Manchester United 1. The draw keeps Ipswich on top of the league, but now only on goal difference from Aston Villa, with Liverpool and Everton close behind. West Ham dropped a point at Oldham and lost the leading promotion place to Notts County, who beat Orient 2-0. Blackburn drew with Chelsea. In Scotland, Aberdeen beat St Mirren to take the lead from Rangers, who missed a penalty and so only drew with Airdrie. Celtic beat Morton. At Cardiff Arms Park, the All Blacks rugby union team faced Cardiff for their first match of the tour and beat them 16-9. Nearly all of the points came in the first half. The margin might have been wider, but New Zealand missed 4 penalties and a conversion. The touring pack was in strong form and dominated in the loose. For the first time, a Cardiff side failed to score a single try against the All Blacks, and here in the first half, they struggled against another attack.
And the All Blacks drive. The pickup was by Mexted. Loveridge shows the ball. Pops it out to Allen. 2 metres short. Mexted in there. And in fact, the ball taken over by New Zealand. And I think it's Woodman that'll get the plaudits for that one.
So a win for the tourists, and fellow countrymen playing the league version were on display at Wigan in their first test against Great Britain. Eddie Waring is the commentator.
James Lulai, Maori. Extended a good pass and they're well taken. Wanting some support. He gets the support. Just 10 yards out. Fred. Oh, and he's going on, and it's a try. Fred Aqua. Going on the short side, Alan Rushton, who says the referee is not quite sure about his method of looking, but he knows he's right. He says it's a chance for a break here for Mark Graham. Inside, and it's a try to Tony Cole.
But in the second half, Britain stormed back.
The crowd cheering them on. And being Ben Casey with 20 minutes gone, 20 to go. Can the siege be broken down? Chance for Redbrin must be under Mike Smith. 14 points to 12 for Great Britain. The crowd have their say, and it's go!
So a remarkable and dramatic end to a hard match. There are 2 tests to go. With only 3 weeks to go before the end of the flat racing season, the contest for the champion jockey title is really hotting up. Before today, Willie Carson had ridden just 5 more winners than Lester Piggott. But the evergreen Piggott has narrowed the gap to 3 by beating Carson twice at Newmarket. In the season's last classic, the Totes' Arrowitch, Piggott on Popsy's Joy came from the back in classic style. The commentator, Peter Bromley.
It's pop away in the noseband on the far side, but Popsy's Joy and Lester Piggott are with them. The 2 are drawing clear of Atford, and then comes Chateau Royal. They're coming up the final hill, and Lester Piggott on Popsy's Joy pulls right away now, and it's Popsy's Joy and Lester Piggott from Pop away. Atford's going to be 3rd with number 9 Chateau Royal in 4th place, so Lester wins the Cesarewitch.
So Popsy's Joy was first at 10-1, second was Pop Away 14-1, third Athford 22-1. Chateau Royal was 4th.
And that's the sport and the news for now. Good night.